Hello everyone, Charles Watts here, the Arsenal correspondent at Goal, joining you once again for one of my Q&As. I've been saying I'm going to do one, trying to get one done anyway at some point this week, and so I've squeezed a little bit of time in and I've asked, put the question out on Twitter. I've had lots of responses. I'm just looking through them all now on my computer. So during this video, when you're going to see me constantly looking down here, and that's because I'm looking at my computer, looking at all your questions. So apologies for looking away, but that's what I'm doing. First of all, thank you very much once again for all your support with this channel. Getting a good amount of views, getting a lot of good number of new subscribers as well. So appreciate that. If you haven't subscribed yet and you fancy it, then there's a button down there somewhere. Just whack it and subscribe. And yeah, I'll try and keep you as updated as I can with all things Arsenal from in and around the club. And obviously we've got football to talk about as well now, which has been nice, which we haven't really had for the last few months. Although saying that, the football's been pretty horrible since it started up again. Obviously 2 defeats for Arsenal, but I'm not going to go over that because we spoke about it all, dissected it all in the last video. So we're not going to talk too much about those 2 defeats right now. I'm going to focus very much on your questions and opinions and all things Arsenal that you've been sending me in today. So I'm not going to waste any more time rambling away at the beginning of this because I've got lots to get through. So here we go. Where shall we start today? We will start, here we go. Jack Laguna says, I better get this one done straight away because it's going to happen fairly soon. But will there be an announcement today regarding the Ceballos, Suarez and Luiz contracts? Yes, there will. Well, there certainly should be. We're expecting one. Arsenal very much working on coming to some sort of conclusion with all 3 of those players. Obviously, there was the Pablo Mari one to sort out as well, but the injury to Mari has kind of put that on the back burner a little bit. It's not got the same time frame. They don't have to meet today's deadline. Obviously today is Tuesday the 23rd, and if players whose registrations end after June the 30th want to carry on playing until the end of the season, they have to sign short-term contract extensions by the end of today. And at Arsenal you've got Cedric Suarez, obviously on loan from Southampton. David Luiz contract expires in the summer, and Dani Ceballos on loan from Real Madrid. So yes, there will be an announcement today. As far as I'm aware, last time I spoke to people yesterday about this, no agreements have been reached with any of them, and it's going to go right up to the wire. Talks up to the wire today, in terms of how it's going to go and who's going to stay. Will they all stay? Will one of them leave? Will one of them not? I mean, the Luiz one is interesting because he's not actually on loan. I think Suarez will get done just because it's not a hard one for him to do. Obviously, is a 3-way conversation because he is technically a Southampton player until the 30th, but then he leaves. So I don't think Southampton are going to be too much of a problem with that. It's just a case of agreeing something with Suarez. The issue is, obviously, if Arsenal aren't going to sign Suarez permanently, and we have no idea yet if they will, they do have an option to do that. But if they don't sign Suarez permanently, then he has to balance out the risks of playing between now and the end of the season and risking getting a serious injury, and then suddenly he's a free agent with an injury and no one's going to touch him. So he's got to balance those risks out. We've seen Ryan Fraser at Bournemouth, for example. He's not playing he's not playing again for Bournemouth now because he's out of contract in this summer and doesn't want to jeopardise a potential transfer. So Suarez might be on the same, and that's why these conversations have been really difficult, and combined with the financial uncertainty that Arsenal are suffering at the moment, it's not been easy going, and Arsenal have been finding it really difficult to plan and to work out finances and things like that. So there will be an announcement today. Arsenal will come out and say exactly what's happening, not just with those 3, but there's also the players out on loan that they've got, like Henrik Mkhitaryan, Mohamed Elneny, Dayot Iliev, who's over in Poland, who I understand that's already been done, and he is staying in Poland until the end of the season. Emil Smith-Rowe, obviously, at Huddersfield as well. So all of those things need to be sorted out by today. I think it goes right up to midnight, though. So whether or not we get an announcement at midnight in terms of what they've all done, they do one big block announcement or they drip feed it throughout the day, we'll have to wait and see. But I am expecting Arsenal to say something at some point today. But I have spoken to someone this morning about it in terms of, is there any sort of time frame on when an announcement may come, and there isn't at the moment, so I can't really say at what point the announcement will come in terms of those 3, and like I said, the loanees as well. David Berry says, hi Charles, which soon-to-be free agents do you think Arsenal should look at in the coming days? Tough one. I mean, I'm sort of look at the list. I actually, last season, I wasn't against the idea of Arsenal signing Ryan Fraser because I was impressed with how he played at Bournemouth. I thought he was good. obviously had a mixed season this season because of, I don't think his head's been in the right place at all. Because of the interest that came in him last year, the fact he stayed at Bournemouth, he's not had a good season this season because I think his head's not really been in it, and he's been all over the place. So I do think Ryan Fraser's a good player, and I wouldn't be against that signing as a squad player, because I think he can bring something to a team. I like the way he plays, I like the way he attacks, I like how direct he is, whips in a very good ball as well. So I wouldn't be against the idea of Ryan Fraser. I know quite a few people would be, but I'm not too sure. I think it might be a good move for someone. Whether he's going to come to Arsenal, I'm not quite so sure. I'm not sure if that interest is cooled from last year. They were very interested last summer. It didn't end up happening. He was disappointed about that. Whether Arsenal move on from that now because they've got certain players. You look at Saka's emergence on the left. Martinelli's in there now as well. We can play on the left. Pepe's coming on the right. Nelson's on the right. So in terms of wingers, they're pretty well stocked now because of a couple of the youngsters that have been promoted. So I'm not quite sure Arsenal are going to really follow up on that interest in Ryan Fraser, but I wouldn't be totally against the signing if it happened in terms of the free agents. Other ones I'm not so sure. Like obviously Kurzawa at PSG, heavily linked. He's a Kia Jarabchin client. We all know that link with Arsenal, but it's not something that I would want to really see happen at all. I'm not far from convinced about him. Arsenal have got left backs anyway, plenty of them. So yeah, that's one that I don't really like the idea of. And then you've seen a lot of the older players like Thiago Silva, people like that. I mean, Willian at Chelsea, actually, I wouldn't mind that. My only sort of reason I'm quite hesitant of that is, again, it's a Kia Jarabchin sign-in, and just that whole link bothers me a little bit. He wouldn't come cheap at all. He's obviously aging. Arsenal have been hurt by a couple of these sort of deals recently. But I've always liked Willian. He's always been one of my favourite players in the Premier League in terms of what he gives and his engine, his non-stop running. But the age thing, it's going to catch up with him. He's 31 years old now, and I'm not sure I'd really want to see another aging player brought in on a big contract. We've seen it with David Luiz already this season. Admittedly, Willian's a couple of years younger, but I wouldn't be totally against Willian. I think he's a winner. He's still got a lot to offer. I don't think he's finished by any means, and he's a decent player. But I think it'd have to be a deal that Arsenal did. It'd have to not be a stupid financial deal, and whether Willian would come on relatively cheap wages, I highly doubt it. So. But yeah, so other than that, they're all fairly aging players. So yeah, I think, like I said, Ryan Fraser I wouldn't be totally against. Willian I wouldn't be totally against, but I'd much rather look at younger, more up and coming talent than go and potentially get some big players on big contracts who are aging and perhaps past their best. Oh, sorry, I'm probably going to pronounce this name totally wrong, so I apologise for that. But I think it's Disavuli on Twitter. He says, we've been really unfortunate with injuries. Is there any problem with our medical department? I don't think so. I think you look at these injuries, I don't think it's down to medical department. What happened to Bernd Leno wasn't anything to do with it, but medical department. Granit Xhaka got his foot caught horribly in the turf at Manchester City. Pablo Mari, I don't think you can blame that really on a medical department. It just looked like a player who hadn't played competitive football for a long time, and he's just done something. So I don't look at it as a medical department's fault. I think Arsenal have been really, really unlucky with injuries recently, and it's not just Arsenal. I think you look at the statistics and the data since players across Europe have come back from this break as well. Injuries are really, really up now because they've not played football for so long, and then suddenly they're thrust back into the competitive action. So I'm not going to sit here and blame the Arsenal medical department for the injuries that we've seen recently. Evan asks, hi Charles, will Arsenal target an attacking midfielder, attacking number 8 type player this summer, as well as a more defensive one, as in Thomas Partey? They do. They're looking at. I've spoken about it before. Okun Koku, Feyenoord order player, they very much like. Been watching an awful lot. Have Feyenoord are well aware of Arsenal's interest. Koku's aware of Arsenal's interest. There has been suggestions over in Holland that Feyenoord trying to get Koku to sign a new contract. Whether that happens or not, I'm not so sure. I mean, I don't think he's absolutely going to be an Arsenal priority this summer, just because transfers can be so difficult for Arsenal. I've talked about that many times before. Thomas Partey is very, very much a priority, but again, how they managed to get that deal done, if they can financially, I don't really know. I'm not sure they know at the moment, because everything's still so uncertain in terms of next season, and won't be in European football. Will there be fans allowed in the stadium? So will they get match day revenue? It's really hard for Arsenal to plan anything in terms of transfers at the moment, and so I think if there is going to be some money to spend, a little bit of money to spend, or they raise some money by selling players, then I'd say Thomas Partey, the sort of holding box to box type player. Actually, he's not really holding Thomas Partey. He gets forward as well. He drives forward. He's a good passer of the ball. But I think he would absolutely be the priority. And then if there is extra funds available, they might look at someone like Koku, who they do like. But I sort of look at their priorities this summer: centre back, right back cover for Bellerin, and the box to box type midfielder that I've spoken about. Craig says, I want to give Zach Medley a chance, for a start on Thursday. He's a beast centre back. Well, I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure he's a beast of a centre back either, from what I've seen of Zach Medley. I don't think he'll be starting on Thursday at all. I know a lot of people sort of hope that he's going to be a really big thing, Zach Medley, but I'm not convinced he's got what it takes to make it at Arsenal, I have to say. Hopefully I'm wrong, because it'd be great to see a young centre back come through, but I haven't really, and I've only seen him a little bit, I have to say, but what I have seen of him, I haven't seen anything yet to make me thought, oh, there's one hell of a, dominant long-term future defender there. So I'm not so sure. Suarez asked me, how do you rate Emi Martinez? Do you put him as a first keeper? Do you think the injury to Leno changes our plans in the market for a goalkeeper? I think that it certainly changes the plan. It's going to have to change the plan. We're not sure we haven't had the official confirmation yet on Leno. We're all fearing the worst. We're all fearing about the cruciate ligament injury. Arsenal, as of yesterday, were still sort of, he was seeing a specialist yesterday, which was Monday, and then Arsenal were hoping they might have a clearer idea today at some point what the injury is. I'm speaking to Mikel Arteta. We are the media at 7 p.m. this evening via Zoom, doing his press conference ahead of the Southampton game. He might be able to give us an update there, or Arsenal may do an update just before the press conference, put it out officially on their official channels in terms of Pablo Mari and Bernd Leno. But obviously we're all fearing the worst in terms of Leno. Hopefully we get a nice pleasant surprise and the injury is not as bad as we all believe it probably is. But if it is a long term, if it is a cruciate, if he is out for a year, I think Arsenal are going to have to do something with the goalkeeping department. I think for me, Emi Martinez, I'd be quite happy for Emi to have a serious long term go at number one. While Leno's injured, I think he's a fine goalkeeper. I think he's certainly paid his dues. He was fantastic at Reading last season. I've got close connections with Reading. I used to cover them before I moved to become an Arsenal reporter, and they love him at Reading. Absolutely love him. He was fantastic. He played a massive part in keeping them up last year. I think he hasn't let Arsenal down at all when he's played this season. So I'd be quite happy for Emi to be number one in Leno's absence. But I think even if you promote Emi, I think you've got to sign a better number two than Matt Macey. I'm not convinced from what I've seen from Macey that he's ready. And if something happened to Emi, I doubt you can't really go at Matt Macey for a long, significant period of time. So unfortunately, I think Arsenal are going to have to do something in a goalkeeper department, which is a real shame for Arsenal, especially because for everything they would have been needing to do and planning to do this summer, one area wouldn't have been a goalkeeper. But because of the injury to Leno, I think they're going to have to do it. Makes sense for it to be a loan, try and possibly get someone in on a season-long loan or a short-term contract, a year-long contract. I've seen Joe Hart mentioned, and I know we also... it was an easy link to make. I was joking about it just with a few people before it even emerged. It's like, he'll get linked, and he already has been. But it kind of makes sense in a way. I'm not saying for number one, first choice, he hasn't played for a long time, Joe Hart, but someone who his experience possibly to sit on the bench for the next season while Emi's in goal. At least then you've got an experienced head who could come in, and I trust him more than Matt Macey. I'd say if he had to have a long period of time in goal next season if something happened to Martinez. So yeah, I do think that he is good enough to be number one, but I think Arsenal probably are going to have to do something in terms of bringing in back up to Martinez next season if Leno is going to be out for 10 months or possibly the whole season. SJR says, which position would you say Arsenal need to spend on the most? For me, 100% midfield. Everyone talks about defenders for Arsenal, and I agree the defenders are probably not good enough, but I just think all Arsenal's problems is down to their midfield. The link between midfield and attack just isn't there. You look at the numbers, you look at assists from midfield, you look at goals from midfield, they are just non-existent. Average at best. And it's causing Arsenal so many problems. You're just relying on the attackers to do something week in, week out, and you're just not getting your midfield backing up and supporting the goals at all. I think that's a huge problem. And defensively, they're not helping the defence enough. You haven't got that ball in. I just think Arsenal need to sort their midfield out. Until they do, they're not going to do anything of any note, because they need to get a really powerful engine room in that team. Really do. Thomas Partey would be fantastic, but I think it'd take more than Thomas Partey. I was hoping Lucas Torreira was going to solve a big part of the problem. It looked like he was going to at first, and then suddenly he's just been thrown aside by Unai Emery last year, and didn't really get his way back in after when Mikel Arteta came in. So whether Torreira is going to be a sort of long-term part of the midfield, I don't know. I still think Guendouzi's got an awful lot to offer. I know he's coming for a little bit of grief recently, but the rise that Guendouzi's had and the rate of it, the speed of it, massively impressive. And if he can just sort himself out and get himself a little bit more switched on and get his attitude right, I still think there's a hell of a player there for Arsenal. But I just, for me, 100%, when you say who they need to spend on most, midfield, sort that midfield out. We've got Saliba coming in the summer as well, obviously, so that's going to help defensively. I think Kieran Tierney's only going to get better at left back. So, and once Leno's back, I think Arsenal got an excellent goalkeeper. So midfield, get it sorted out. Until Arsenal sort out that midfield, they're not going to achieve anything, I don't think. That is the absolute key problem for Arsenal, and it has been for an awful long time. The midfield just isn't good enough at both ends of the pitch. It doesn't do enough to support the attack, and it doesn't do enough to support the defence. Needs solving, absolutely needs solving. Sorry, I'm going to have a drink. Right, what we got? David says, in all seriousness, can Arteta play himself in midfield? No. Aid, which is at hand of Arteta, has asked for what's the latest on Luiz and Ceballos. I've already answered that, so I'm not going to answer it again. So I'm sure you've probably seen it anyway. I get a lot of questions on this when I look through them, and they're ones that I've already covered, already answered. So it's not that I'm ignoring your questions. I say this every time. It's just that I've already answered your questions elsewhere in the Q&A. So don't think I'm ignoring you. I'm not. I am looking at them. I am seeing them, but because I've answered them elsewhere, there's no point me going over and over and over again on it, because it'd be boring for you to listen to over and over again, and the video would go on for about 3 hours. So leaving it out a little bit. Hi Charles, is a Kluivert Mkhitaryan swap deal on the cards, or is it just nonsense? It's an interesting one. I don't think it's entirely nonsense from what I've heard, but it's going to be an incredibly difficult deal for Arsenal to pull off in it one way, because Roma absolutely want to keep Mkhitaryan. Mkhitaryan wants to stay at Roma, but Mkhitaryan's in his 30s. He's got 1 year left in his contract. For Arsenal to do that sort of deal and to get Kluivert coming this way, even though I don't think Kluivert's exactly torn it up since he's gone to Serie A. He's young, he's talented. Roma spent a lot of money to take him to Italy. It would cost. It's not going to be a case of a straight swap if that deal happened. It would cost an awful lot of money, or for Arsenal, they'd probably get 10 million for Mkhitaryan, something like that. Roma is sort of willing to pay around that mark, from what I understand, for Mkhitaryan, to get that deal done in the summer. But then Arsenal would have to pay another 20 million possibly on top of that to get, or maybe even more, to get Kluivert, because of his age and long-term contract at Roma. So I think it's something that Arsenal would be interested in, and someone that I've spoken to who knows the Kluivert camp relatively well seems to think there is something in it, but I just think it would be a very, very difficult one for Arsenal to pull off, and so I wouldn't be holding my breath on it. Barca, Aubameyang to Barca, asks Ducky Davu. There's a couple of questions. JP as well. Honestly, in your opinion, will Aubameyang stay or will he go? We're talking about Aubameyang now. Let's focus on Auba. First of all, the Barcelona. Look, Barcelona are interested in Aubameyang. They were interested in him in January. Arsenal made it clear it'd be cost about £50 million if someone was going to sign Aubameyang in January. That scared Barca a mile, because for all as huge as Barca are, they are suffering financial issues just as much as anyone else are, and they were never going to pay 50 million for Aubameyang in the summer. They even as well they were seeing cheekily, pretty much seeing if they could get him on loan as well, which was just batted out of the park straight away by Arsenal. Absolutely not going to happen. They were, from as far as I'm aware, speaking to someone I know who's very close to Barcelona, Martinez is absolutely number one priority. That's who they're focusing on. If they can't get Martinez, then it would not surprise me at all if they turn back to Aubameyang, just because of his goal record. They'll think he's going to be a hell of a lot cheaper now than he would have been in January. And so it wouldn't surprise me at all. And look, for Aubameyang, that would be something that he would surely be interested in at his stage of the career if that opportunity came up. But it all depends on Martinez, from what I understand. But he is absolutely still number one priority for Barcelona. He's the player they want to get to come in as a new striker. If that doesn't happen, if Inter stand firm, if Barca can't afford him, then Aubameyang, I'm positive, will come back onto their list of priorities, just because of their interest they've had in him in the last 12 months, and the fact of his contract situation at Arsenal. And in terms of my opinion, JP, will Aubameyang stay or will he go? I've always said, before the pandemic, I was convinced Auba would have gone this summer. Now, because of the pandemic, it's more of a chance in my mind that he will stay, just because I don't think clubs are going to be as interested in spending the sort of money that Arsenal would want for him, given in 10 months' time they could get him on a free transfer. I'm not sure Auba will be getting the offer of wages that he would have probably been expecting at this point, just because of the financial implications of the pandemic. He's very well paid at Arsenal. So if people aren't offering him that much to leave in terms of wages, he might just think, well, I'll just see out my contract, stay for another year, take the good money I'm getting on Arsenal, where he is happy, he likes it in London, and then wait until next summer when maybe the financial situation has changed and the outlook is not quite so bleak for clubs, because fans will probably be being let back into the stadiums at that point. Commercial revenues will be up, broadcast revenues will be more solid, and clubs could predict more exactly how much money is going to be coming in. So I think that the chances of Auba staying are now certainly improved than they were probably 5-6 months ago. But as I said, if Barcelona come knocking, if they decide that they can't get Martinez and they could get Aubameyang, then it's going to be a move that really appeals to Aubameyang. There's no doubt about it. Adam asks, how many players are we looking to bring in and how many are we looking to let go? I mean, in terms of letting go, I think I've said this before, I don't think any player is unsellable at Arsenal, aside from Leno. Well, he's certainly unsellable now because of the injury, but even before the injury, I think he was just one player Arsenal wouldn't have considered selling. And Martinelli, I highly doubt that they would even consider selling, given his potential ceiling for improvement, and he's only been here a year. But other than that, I just think the situation that Arsenal are in financially, the situation the world is in financially, and the situation Arsenal are in footbally, footbally is not even a word, but you know what I mean, that they would just consider selling anyone. If a decent bid came in for anyone, I don't think they're going to turn it down. They would certainly consider it, just because it'd bring in much needed money to the club, money that Mikel Arteta could then invest in trying to reshape the squad the way he sees it. And I think Arsenal would have just come to the end of the tether with most of the players as well. They haven't put the type of performances on a regular basis which would make themselves unsellable. So I think they will. I wouldn't be surprised if again, before the pandemic, I think we would have seen wholesale changes this summer. Arteta would have really tried to put his stamp on the squad. May not be quite so brutal now this summer, because it's going to be harder for Arsenal to move players on, because teams aren't going to have the money to spend on them, and players are going to be a little bit more hesitant about moving, because, as I said, maybe contracts aren't going to be anywhere near as appealing because of the financial situation. So it'll probably be a little bit harder, the big reshuffle that I was expecting this summer, but I still think a fair few players will go. In terms of bringing in, as I've said, Arsenal's priority, as far as I'm aware, has been centre-back, central midfield, and a right-back sort of cover competition for Hector Bellerin. If Aubameyang or Lacazette goes, if a good bid comes in for those sort of players, then obviously Arsenal will have to look to replace them, so that will change things a little bit. But as far as I'm aware, right now, and the way the squad is, centre-back, central midfield and right-back are the three priority areas. Questions from Tyler there about Aubameyang and Saka's contracts. As far as I'm aware, in terms of update, I don't think there has been. I still think that's something that we're going to wait until the summer to see what happens, just because the financial situation is just so unclear, as I stated earlier on. Broadcast revenue, how many fans are going to be allowed into stadiums, if any, next season, where are Arsenal going to finish in Europe. It's just, there's so many uncertainties and so many unanswered questions. It's really hard for Arsenal to nail down contract talks at the moment, because there's so much things up in the air and they don't know how much money they're going to have to play with. They don't know what they're going to be able to offer players in terms of European football and things like that. And the players will want to wait and see what happens as well. So in terms of Auba and Saka, I don't think there's been any update. Certainly nothing I've heard suggests there's been any update on the two situations. Nana Aubameyang says, will signing a Partey be impossible? Be possible. As I've said, I think he's very much going to be the priority target this summer. Arteta likes him, Arsenal like him, Partey likes Arsenal, Atletico Madrid know that Arsenal like Partey. It's all there. It's all out in the open. Everyone knows the situation. I think at both clubs, the player, it's just a case of finances. Can Arsenal find the finances to get it? I think they'll try their hardest. Getting into qualifying for Europe will obviously help massively. If it becomes clear in the next month or so before the season ends that fans might be allowed into the stadium at some point next season, that will help massively. Also, if Arsenal can sell some players, that will help massively. It's all a lot of ifs there. But so I think it is possible, but I think Arsenal are going to have to do a lot of things, and a lot of things are going to have to fall into place for Arsenal to be able to do a deal of that magnitude this summer. Jack says, Charles, my question to you is, what do you think needs to happen for our club to compete, to be top four again? They just need to invest better. They need to sign better players. They need to be clever in the transfer market. It's as simple as that. They've wasted so much money. Everyone says Kroenke doesn't spend any money, and I mean that is true, because he doesn't put his own money in, and all the money Arsenal spend is, they generate it themselves, and it's a self-sustainable model. But Kroenke's certainly given them the green light to spend an awful lot of money in the last few years. You look at their transfer spending; it's been a lot. It's been lots. They've laid down loads of money in the last few years, because certainly what Arsenal used to spend, but they've just spent it badly. It's just been really bad recruitment. And until it's at any club, if your recruitment's poor, you're not going to progress. You're going to struggle. If your recruitment's spot on, you're going to have a very good season. No matter, Leicester have shown it. Leicester have recruited so well, and look how well they've done. I think they've got a very good coach as well. But even before that, the years they won the title, it's just fantastic recruitment, and they've just built up a squad, really good, talented young squad, through good recruitment. And it's so important. That's why it's so disappointing for me that Sven Mislintat left. I always just think that Arsenal had a really, really excellent man in the club there, in terms of recruitment, in terms of how he went about getting players in. Exciting players, exciting young talent. And it was a shame. But they've still got good recruitment at the club. Francis Cagiao, excellent, fantastic reputation, has signed and spotted so many good players. We've seen it. He led the Martinelli transfer last summer. So the scouting network is still there. They've got excellent talent scouts in France, across Europe, Arsenal. It's just a case of getting those deals done. And they've shown it in the last couple of years. Did it with Guendouzi, they've done it with Martinelli. They just need more of that. But when they lay down the big money, they need to get it right. And that's somewhere they've struggled fairly recently. You look at the money they've spent on, say, 20 million even Socrates. I don't mind Socrates, but 20 million, not really worked out as it. It's not been a fantastic signing. Nicolas Pepe, a lot of money committed to Nicolas Pepe. I still think he's an exciting player, really exciting, fantastic goal at the weekend. But he hasn't really delivered in his first season, as probably we would expect. I think that's fair to say. But I do think he's shown flashes that, maybe next season he's going to have a really good season. You go back to Granit Xhaka, Shkodran Mustafi, Lucas Perez that summer. It's nearly £100 million just for me wasted, absolutely wasted. Could have been spent so much better elsewhere. So that's where Arsenal's problem is, and until he sorts it out, they're not going to improve, because the recruitment has been poor, and it has been for a long time, and that's why the decline has happened. I think they've got an excellent coach now. I think they've got a few excellent players, but the rest of the squad makeup has just been poor, and you can't rely on just a load of good young players, which they've got, but it'd be asking an awful lot of them to really take this club forward now at the level that their rivals are competing at. They need to sign better players who are going to come in and immediately improve the team. That's why I was talking earlier in this about the midfield, the engine room, and that if till Arsenal sort that out, it's not going to be good enough, because they just need to get that right. They need to recruit better and get that midfield right, because they've tried and they haven't managed it recently, and they need to get it right. That's why I think Thomas Partey, if they can get it done, has to be the priority, because he's everything I've seen of Thomas Partey, he ticks all the boxes that Arsenal need in their midfield. Mayank Bassin says, "Hey Charles, hope you're doing well. Considering the reported interest in Auba from the likes of Barcelona and Real, do you see players like Coutinho, Dembele, Jovic being involved in a straight swap deal this summer?" I think if some moves are going to happen this summer, you're certainly going to see some big swap deals happen. Whether that happens with Auba, I don't know. Just given his contract situation, might be a bit hard for Arsenal to get. Say Jovic, who's young, he's not had a great first season at Real Madrid, but you sort of go back to what he was like at Frankfurt and the money that Real laid down to get Jovic. I think Arsenal would struggle to get him in a straight swap deal for Auba. They'd have to put a fair bit of money down as well. So I think that might make it difficult. I wouldn't be surprised. I still wouldn't be surprised if Jovic ends up going out on loan this summer. And that might be something that Arsenal look at. There's going to be loan deals as well. Clubs are going to operate in a loan market a hell of a lot more than they have done recently. And that might be someone that Arsenal look at if they do move on one of the forwards. In terms of Coutinho, I don't see it happening. There is the link with Drabchin again. He's obviously Coutinho's agent, which make it slightly possible, but his wages are just so prohibitive for Arsenal. He's obviously been linked with them, but he's been offered around every single club. Barca are desperate to get him out. He wants to leave. He wants to go and play football. He likes it in England. The Drabchin links makes it easy to suggest Arsenal as a possible destination, but the finances involved in it, even if it's a loan deal, Barca want about £10 million, €10 million loan fee, just like they did with Bayern Munich for him. And then on top of that, he's earning 240 grand a week at Barcelona, and they'll want a lot of that to shift him on and to agree to let him out on loan. They'll want the other club to basically pay all of those wages, and Arsenal aren't going to do that. So I think it's going to be very hard, and it's the same with Dembele as well. So I think it'll be very difficult. I mean, you're not going to get Dembele for Aubameyang, are you? I know he's had his injury problems at Barca, but it's just not going to happen. Barca aren't going to agree to that. Arsenal would have to put down a hell of Aubameyang and a lot of money to get Dembele. So it's not quite as simple as just player swap deals, especially when you're talking about Aubameyang, because you've got to factor his contract into the whole situation. Let's see. Top Gun says, "Hi Charles, do you think the players we are linked with, Partey, Kluivert, Cocu, will improve us next season, especially if Auba and Laka are sold? I'm dreading a relegation battle." Aren't we all? I mean, God, you sort of look at it now, I don't know what Arsenal's on 40 points now. You think those 3 wins before lockdown was so important, because if they hadn't got those wins before lockdown and they'd started this period as they have with these 2 straight defeats, you really would be staring over your shoulder. And that just seems ridiculous to even suggest for an Arsenal fan. But I think, well, look, I've already said I think Partey would improve Arsenal massively, absolutely massively. I think if Auba does leave, though, that's going to leave a huge gap, in Arsenal's squad in their starting 11, because this guy gets all the goals. You look at the numbers. Without him, it would be a real struggle. So I think if you get rid of Auba, you absolutely have to bring in a top quality forward to replace him. You can't rely on Nketiah to do it. Lacazette's only got 2 years left in his contract. We don't know what's going to happen with that. He's not scoring. He hasn't scored at the rate of goals that we probably would have expected him to since he's moved from Lyon. Although I still think he's a very good player. So I think if Arsenal do sell Aubameyang, then they've got to look at bringing someone in. But it's going to be really hard. Who do you bring in? A, you're not going to have much money to spend because you're not going to get lots for Aubameyang, and B, are you going to be a really appealing option, especially if you're not in Europe next season? Jonathan David's a player they really like, but he's young. He's not really an out-and-out striker either, and it looks like he's probably going to end up going to Germany anyway. Edouard at Celtic, another player that they like. Again, you're asking a lot to bring someone down from Scotland and to fill the boots left by Aubameyang if they did get that deal done. Celtic are also working very hard to try and keep him. I'm going to let him go for cheap. Moussa Dembele at Lyon's another player they've had a long-term interest in. he's perhaps slightly more ready to come in and try and fill the void of a top level striker, just because he's paid his dues. He did his stint in Scotland, scored the goals. He's gone to France in Lyon, scored his goals. Now maybe he's ready for the next stage in his career. So that's someone who probably wouldn't deal with the expectation levels. It wouldn't be as tough for him as it would be for, say, someone like David or Edouard. But money-wise, it's not. We all know how hard it is to deal with. Olise, he's not going to let Dembele go for cheap, and Arsenal haven't got much money, so it's going to be very difficult. So yeah, I think if they do sell Auba, they will struggle massively unless they get in a good top level replacement. But I do think fixing the midfield would do a hell of a lot for Arsenal, and would improve them massively if they just got one big dominating player in of the ilk of Partey. Then that would improve Arsenal hugely. And you've got to remember Saliba's coming in. I know he's young, I know he's a kid, but he does tick all the boxes when you look at his stats and you speak to everyone. Certainly, people I've spoken to in France about just how good he is and how dominant he is and how much they think he's going to improve Arsenal. That'll be a big boost. Laurent says, do you think Arteta could opt for Luiz in midfield? No, not for me. Don't think so. That ship sailed. If Arteta's turning to Luiz to sort out the midfield problem, that says a hell of a lot about the problems at Arsenal. I trust Arteta says, will Arsenal be able to compete with the other top clubs in Europe? I've kind of said my way on that Arsenal needs to improve recruitment. If they're going to compete with their rivals, they've got to get better recruitment. Simple as that. Jay says, why is it everyone at Arsenal know we need 2 centre-backs and a defensive midfielder to sort this team out? Upamecano and Ndidi. Oh, I'll tell you what, I'd love Ndidi. That's a good shout. I'd love Ndidi, but he would not come cheap at all, and Leicester are in no position to need to sell as well. They're going to be in Champions League next season. If someone is going to leave Leicester, it'll be Chilwell this summer. I just can't see anyone getting Ndidi out of there. It'd be too expensive, and like I said, Leicester have got no need to sell. Such a well-run club. When you talk about good recruitment as well, you look at that Leicester model is fantastic. So yeah, I agree with you. Arsenal do need. I think if they could get another centre back to go alongside William Saliba. Mari was obviously going to be a player they were going to try and sign permanently. I think they still will, despite the injury. But they probably need someone else as well as Mari when it comes to centre backs. And I've talked about defence midfield. And he says, do we even have any money to spend this summer? The answer to that, I'm afraid, is I don't know. Plain and simple. All the messages we're getting in terms of Arsenal in this transfer window is it's going to be incredibly difficult for them. But right now, Arsenal don't know exactly what they're going to have to spend because there's so many uncertainties. I've talked about it. We don't know where they're going to finish this season. We don't know if they're going to be in Europe at all this season. We don't know if fans are going to be allowed into the stadium, and that's a really key one for Arsenal. £144 million Arsenal predicted to lose next season if they are out of the if fans aren't allowed in for the entire season. I mean, that's huge. It's absolutely massive. And so with all that uncertainty, it's very, very hard to plan for the future. So that we need to know a little bit more. We need to know where Arsenal are going to finish. We need to know what the deal is with the Premier League and the government and the potential for fans to come back into the stadium, because that will make a huge difference to Arsenal finances. Mike and Bestie here, both asking questions about Raul. Can you ever see Raul being held accountable for some of the shocking decisions made in recent seasons? Are the likes of Raul, Huss, Vinay under pressure? They seem to be failing at their jobs and not staying true to their word. Is Josh Kay any more involved? I mean, Josh Kay is very much involved. He's certainly far more involved, hands-on, than his father is. In terms of Raul, I mean, he will be held accountable if there are consistent failings that go on for a couple of seasons. I don't think his position's under any scrutiny right now, but I think if Arsenal continue to struggle and continue to start falling further and further adrift, and the work he's doing isn't making them get any closer to the rivals, then he absolutely will come under scrutiny. But I don't think he is just yet. You've got to remember, at the end of last summer, Raul was being hailed by as a hero by many, and thinking Arsenal had a fantastic transfer window. It's just not panned out like that. And he's also, I know a lot of people are against the sort of agent type links, and he seems to be working with agents a lot more than we've been used to at Arsenal. But I think, for me, I think you've got to kind of give him the benefit of the doubt for now and see what work he can do in the next couple of windows. He's also trying to guide Arsenal through what is absolutely one of the biggest crises in the club's history. They've said that. They've called it one of the most challenging periods in the club's history. So he is, I think you've got to factor that into the whole situation as well. To answer your two question, I think he will be held accountable if the failings continue. If Arsenal continue to struggle, if they continue to fall further and further adrift, if the money that's been spent doesn't seem to be working out and improving the squad, then absolutely I think he'll be held accountable, but I don't think he is just yet. Mr. Tommy asked a big question. Why is Martinelli not playing? I don't know. We are, as I said, we're speaking of Mikel Arteta later today, and that is absolutely going to be a plan of topics in terms of questions for Arteta. Is the sort of Martinelli situation, because I'm baffled by it. I don't really understand it. I like what Arteta's doing, but the one thing that really has surprised me is the whole Martinelli thing. I don't know why he's not playing more. He seems to have fallen way behind Nketiah in the pecking order, and I don't really understand why. So that'll be absolutely a question for Mikel Arteta in his press conference today, and it'll be interesting to see what his response is to that. S says, are we a Finnish club? No, we're not. We're Arsenal. Of course we're not a Finnish club. It's tough times at the moment, but got to keep the faith. AB says, do you know if Arsenal have looked at any young centre-backs recently? Well, we've got William Saliba arriving in the summer. They've absolutely got an interest in Axel Disasi over in France. Very young centre-back they've watched a lot of. They've already made their interest known in him. Whether they sign him, whether they get that deal done this summer, I don't know at this point, but he's absolutely on the agenda. He's a player they like. So yes, they are looking at young centre-backs. Chi asked, what's the atmosphere in the team like right now? Well, the atmosphere before they went back into lockdown was very, very good. Before they came out of lockdown and before the restart was very good. Now, 2 defeats is going to have a huge impact on the atmosphere, and no one's going to be enjoying that now. But ahead of the restart, from what I was told, that everyone was really enjoying London Colney. Everyone was buying into Mikel Arteta's work. Everyone was really enjoying working under Arteta. They're impressed by him. But obviously, that only goes so far. You've got to win. If you're not winning, football players are going to be miserable. The atmosphere in training grounds is not going to be great. So they've got to start winning. They've got to start winning quickly. 2 massive games this week. Southampton, Sheffield United, huge. Got to win them. Got to start getting results. Robbie says, based on your observations, who are the natural leaders in the squad and who should be captain? I've long advocated. I've long said that Hector Bellerin should be captain of Arsenal. I know performance-wise, Hector is yet to show the sort of form that we saw before he was injured. I'm fingers crossed that he is going to go back to that level of form and his fitness is going to keep improving. But I just think for everything that Hector stands for, I think it's everything that Arsenal stand for. I think he's a great talker. He's got full respect to the change room. So when Aubameyang leaves, for me, 100% Hector Bellerin would be my pick for Arsenal captain. Dampfer here, bang on, this is what I've been saying. Dampfer, our midfield is actually our main problem. If we sign Partey, Sabitzer and Tolisso, then we'll be fine. Our younger midfielders just can't handle the pressure right now. Agree, I think midfield, as I've said already, is the key area that Arsenal need to improve. Otumba says, good morning, Charles. Has Arsenal made any contact with Partey or his representatives? Yes, Partey's representatives are well aware of Arsenal's interest, and so are Atletico Madrid. I'm not sure I'm going to get this right. I'm afraid Ananyo. I'm sorry if that pronunciation is terrible. What do you think is Edu's job as technical director on a day-to-day basis? And how do you think it's perceived at the club? Edu's very popular at the club, 100%. I know he's getting a little bit of grief from fans at the moment, but I think when the results are bad, everyone in those sort of positions is going to start getting a little bit of grief. But he's absolutely respected by everyone at the club. He works really hard. It's not just on transfers. I know everyone thinks it's just transfers, but it's not. It's across the whole areas of the club. He's very big with the academy. He works very well with Per Mertesacker at Hale End. And he's very respected, and everyone thinks he's doing a very good job at the club. But ultimately, I think the way he's perceived by the fans is going to depend on how successful Arsenal are in the transfer market. He's the technical director. He's the man who's supposed to be getting the deals done for the club. But you've got to remember that Raul has a very big say as well. It's not just Edu going out there getting it. It's Raul as well. And in fact, Raul does a lot of the negotiations himself. He works with a lot of agents himself. So yeah, I can understand that how Edu's perception at the moment with some fans is not the greatest because of the struggles, but in terms of how he's viewed at the club, he's viewed very, very well. Abkari says, can the board for once not be truthful and transparent to us about financial ability or not of our beloved club? Well, to be fair, I think they actually have been fairly, they've called this the most challenging period in the club's history, or one of the most challenging. They've been very clear about how difficult and how the finances are at the moment. So I think they've been fairly clear on it, to be honest, that they're not dressing it up. Then the word we're getting and the word we're putting out there, I know a lot of people don't like hear it, is that Arsenal are going to really struggle to compete financially this summer because of the impact of the coronavirus, because of the impact of the wage bill and being outside of Champions League football for 3 years. It's going to be an incredibly difficult summer for Arsenal in the transfer market. That's what we're being told. That's the message we're putting out. The club have put that message out, certainly as well, by in a few of their sort of updates that they do at the moment, sort of monthly updates they're doing during the pandemic. Guna says, what do you think of Arteta's response, or what do you think Arteta's response will be regarding Guendouzi's comments to the Brighton players? I don't think Arteta's going to be very happy with it at all. He's not the type of manager who's going to stand for that sort of thing. I can kind of understand Mateo. Look, he's an emotional character. We know that. He'd seen one of his teammates taken out totally unnecessarily, for me, to a really nasty injury. So I can understand why he was frustrated. Obviously, there was a last-minute goal as well by the player who caused the injury to Leno. But I think you've still got to be a little bit wiser on the football pitch. You've got to be more mature. You've got to risk not getting yourself suspended. Fortunately, he didn't get suspended, but he easily could have done. He should have done. Let's face it, he should have been suspended. He only got off on a real sort of technical thing. So Arteta won't be happy with him at all. And if the comments are, I've seen what the rumours are about what you've been saying to the players, the Brighton players, and if that's correct, then that's not going to go down with Arteta well at all. We've already seen him fall out with Matteo as well, obviously during the training camp in Dubai last season. Joshua Glover says, financial fair play has been relaxed for teams who play in the EL and Champions League. Is this true? And if it's not, would we spend big? We're not going to. Arsenal aren't going to spend big this summer. I'm convinced of it. I know last season, and I've been pillared for it, and I always will be pillared for it, saying that Arsenal didn't have the money to sign Pepe. That was information based on something I absolutely trusted at the time. Obviously, Arsenal went and signed Pepe, and not just me, a few of us looked pretty silly about that. But that was a deal, the way it was structured, that meant Arsenal didn't actually have to spend that much money. I know all transfer deals are structured in a similar way. You're not just putting down a lot of money, you're not just paying the whole fee in one go. But normally you do pay a fairly substantial whack for straight up. Not all of it, far from it, but a decent financial whack. Arsenal didn't really have to do that with Pepe last year. And they did make some sales as well, with Iwobi and people like that, which helped with that situation. But I can only say what I'm being told, and what people I've spoken to have been telling me is that Arsenal are going to struggle financially this summer to do really a lot of business in the transfer market. I can only say what I'm being told, I'm afraid. I'm sorry. How do you attempt to arrange the midfield for Southampton? Well, they haven't got many options, to be honest. I actually thought, and I said it, and I know a lot of people disagree with me, that I didn't think Arsenal played that badly at Brighton. I think they created a lot of chances. They should have won that game comfortably. And they just let themselves down right at the end in the last 15 minutes and threw the game away. So the issue is, look, we've got to wait and find out what happens with Ceballos. Is Ceballos going to be sticking around? If he is, and I don't think Ceballos played very well at all at the weekend. I thought he had a really poor game and gave the ball away a lot. Wasn't very impressive, but I think Ceballos has to play. For me, I think Guendouzi, now he's not banned, has to play again. And I liked Saka playing in that 3 as well, because I thought Saka was really, really impressive. So I wouldn't be surprised if it is fairly similar to what we saw at Brighton. There's been 4 days gap now as well, so I kind of like that, because we're not gonna have Xhaka back yet. I think Xhaka certainly comes in. It's still going to be too early for Torreira, so they don't have too many options in midfield. So I do think we'll probably see something similar to what we saw at Brighton. Hashim asks, is Max Aarons a transfer target? He's a player that Arsenal are very interested in, Max Aarons, but again, financially, I think it might be a hard one for Arsenal to pull off. But he's a player they've watched a lot. Lots of clubs are looking at Max Aaron, though. He's a player that they like. Lots of clubs like. He will be moving. He wants to move. He wanted to move last summer. He didn't get that move. And I think he switched agents now as well. I think they're going to have a he is going to move this summer. Norwich are going to go down. They're going to sell a few players, and Max Aaron will head out. Whether it's to Arsenal, I'm not sure, just because of the finances involved in it. Again, I think if Newcastle were taken over and Pochettino goes to Newcastle, that's absolutely a transfer I would expect to happen. Max Aaron's to Newcastle, because Pochettino loves him. Hugo asks, can Saliba play for this season? No, he can't. Will Emil Smith-Rowe play for the remainder of the season? And he'll go back to Huddersfield, so no, he won't. A couple more questions on Guendouzi. I've already spoken about that. Leno again, will that affect the transfer market? I've already spoken about that. 19 asks about Saka playing in the sort of left central midfield position. How I thought he did. I thought he did very well. Do you see him playing there in the future? I do. I mean, I don't. Saka's an interesting one in terms of where he's going to end up. I think he's fantastic at left back. I know he doesn't want to play there, but I think he offers an awful lot at left back. Obviously, he wants to play left wing, so that's the area he's going to target playing. But I like him in the central areas as well. I've heard that he's been playing in number 10 as well in training, doing pretty well. He's obviously, I was really impressed with him in that position against Charlton in the sort of slightly deeper left central midfield position. So I do see him playing there in the future, but I see him playing in a lot of positions in the future. He's that good that he can play anywhere really, because he's that talented a kid. And I don't think his natural position is really nailed down yet. So it'll be interesting to see how he progresses over the next few years and what sort of player he turns into. I think we're coming to the end now. I'm just looking through all of these questions that have still to come up, and I've answered a lot of them. There's questions on Raul, there's questions on Edu, Martinelli. I've answered all these questions already, so I'm not going to go over them again. Will Arsenal try to replace Ozil, says Ntosu. They absolutely will, but I still don't see Ozil leaving this summer. I think it'd be really hard. Arsenal will absolutely try to get Ozil out this summer. They've tried the last couple of windows, but it's really hard to move a player on who's on that sort of money who doesn't want to go. So for Arsenal, I think they're probably stuck with Ozil for another year unless he has a big change of heart and a move comes up that really appeals to him. But given the business interests he has in London, given he's just had a baby, I'm just not sure this is going to be a summer where he's going to want to move. So I think Arsenal probably will have Mesut Ozil until the end of his contract in 2021. AFC fans asked about, is there any truth in the Upamecano rumour? I mean, it depends what you mean about truth. Are Arsenal interested in him? Yes, they are. They've liked him for a long time. There was early talks about potentially doing something last summer. It didn't come to any sort of fruition. But in terms of truth, there was a rumour doing around last week. I remember speaking about it in one of my last videos that Arsenal kind of agreed a fee for Upamecano, and as far as I'm aware, that's absolutely not true in the slightest. So yeah, that's. I'm not sure on your exact question there when you ask about truth. If you're asking if they're interested in him, yes, they are. Have they agreed a fee with him? No, they haven't. Will they be able to afford him? I highly doubt it. Reece Nelson asks the future of OC2. That hasn't been decided yet. I think he's going to come back to this summer. Obviously, he went out last year before Arteta had arrived at the club. Didn't really get a look in under Unai Emery. He's having a very good time over in Germany at the moment. Certainly in the second half season when he's been playing slightly forward, and he's been in a more advanced role than his usual right back role. So I think in terms of his future, that will be decided in the summer. He'll come back. He'll speak with Mikel, something he hasn't been able to do yet. They'll talk about both of them, how they see things going over the next year or so. But one thing OC2 is not going to want to do is come back and play under 23s football next season. So it'll be a case of if Arteta can't guarantee him playing time, then maybe he will move on and Arsenal will look to cash in. So we'll have to wait and see about that. Just going through the last few questions now. I think this is pretty much it. Majita asked, the Freak asks, does Arteta really want David Luiz to stay? Yes, he does absolutely want him to stay. He really appreciates David Luiz. thinks he's a very good defender still. He likes the way he thinks the way he plays it's suited to Arteta's style. He thinks he's really good behind the scenes as well. So yeah, he does want him to stay. I think it got a little bit easy on David Luiz as well. Yeah, he had a shocker at Man City, but there's obviously a lot of things going on with Luiz in his future that didn't help with that situation. Before lockdown, Luiz was Arsenal's best defender and was playing really well, and that was at a time when we were seeing really positive things from Arteta's side and progressive things, and defence was improving, and Luiz was key to that. Yeah, I think we're pretty much at it. I'm just going through looking through these last questions now, but they're all fairly, I've gone over them all. So I think that's pretty much it now. Thank you very much for your questions. And if I haven't answered yours, like I said, I'm going through them all now. If I haven't answered yours, it's not because I'm ignoring you. I promise it's just because I've already gone on. And look, we're at 55 minutes now already for this video. So if I was answering every single one and just going over the same things time and time and time again, we'd be going on for 3 hours. So I'm not going to do that. So I haven't been ignoring you, I promise. But thank you very much. As always, I really appreciate your talking to you and keeping the sort of link going between us. I really enjoy doing these Q&As, and I'll carry on doing them, and I will give you another shout. Look out on my Twitter, which is @Charles_Watts for the next one that I'm going to do. And until then, enjoy the sunshine, try and forget about the football, try and forget about Arsenal being pretty rubbish at the moment, and try and think positive. Thursday night we'll go against Southampton, and then we've got the FA Cup quarter-final to look forward to on Sunday against Sheffield United. So please do keep checking goal.com. We write on with updates throughout leading up to these games. We've got the contract situations we should be hearing about today. So please do head over to goal.com and keep bang up to date with exactly what's going on. So until then, everyone, stay safe. Thank you for joining me, and I'll